when you start really internalizing what's going on and trying to take an introspective look, you start really seeing that the stress, you may not think it's there, you may think you can handle it, but it's going to wear you down over time.
And the more that you hold it in, it leads to, it's important that when you go into the medical or legal field that you understand the ramifications and what you're sacrificing, because it's not all rainbows and butterflies. It is such a big, hard, difficult career choice that sometimes you want to know ahead of time so that you can prepare yourself mentally and physically.
The stress could lead to the drinking could lead to the divorce could lead to the suicidal thoughts. And you could reverse that order, you can switch up that order, and it all still exists. I'm getting a divorce, so I'm going to start to drink. I've been working more hours, so now I'm really depressed because I'm not spending time with the family, and now I'm thinking about hurting myself. It all intertwines.
Medicine,
Law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area. Welcome, everyone, to the Medical Legal Brief. For those who are joining us for the first time, please make sure you subscribe, follow, like. We're on most social medias, especially on YouTube and Spotify. For those who are returning, please leave us a comment and let us know what you like or dislike about what we've done so far. We've got several episodes out, so we're excited to start this episode where we go into more of a dark subject. We usually keep it pretty light and airy here, but it's time to get into the nitty gritty and the dark side of medicine and law.
We talk a lot about the pros and cons of practice. We go over pros and cons of money and licensing and studying and so on and so forth. But we really haven't dove into what you refer to as the darker side of what kind of pressures do professionals like lawyers and doctors face. There's talk of substance abuse, divorce, suicide. There's all these things that exist that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Based on what we want to bring to our audience, it's probably a good talking point to bring it up and bring it to the forefront.
It's important that when you go into the medical or legal field that you understand the ramifications and what you're sacrificing, because it's not all rainbows and butterflies. Obviously, the episodes we've talked about in the past have talked about all those beautiful things. But again, this is that other side of the coin that we need to make sure that all people who are interested in these careers understand, because it's becoming more known. Statistics are coming out more and more every day. And it's just very apparent that it is such a big, hard, difficult career choice that sometimes you want to know ahead of time so that you can prepare yourself mentally and physically.
Completely agree. And I also think that, again, with information and technology and being able to find information resources out there, it's a little bit more prevalent because it's a little bit more spoken about. People are a lot more willing to seek out help and seek out assistance and really face the problems head on, as opposed to what may have been in the past where people really just put their head in the sand and they don't want to address it and they just try to continue living the life that they're living, and it might lead them down a dark road. So I want to start the conversation off asking you a question, and we're starting where we always start, which is for you, medical school. During medical school, was there any talk about the difficulties or the career risks, the things that you would go through from a negative aspect as a doctor, both professionally and personally?
Not really. There are not any like true courses or classes or mandatory things that you take to learn about these things. It's that unspoken conversation that you have among peers with your mentors. It's something that we know is an issue within the field, but it's not something that we openly talked about or went over. The biggest thing that they harped on was really work-life balance. And that's where you would touch in on why we were having that conversation, because of the suicide, because of the divorce, because of the personal relationships that can be hindered when you go into medicine and law. It revolved around work-life balance, but then it would lead into conversations, brief conversations about those other dark areas.
For us in law school, we actually did talk about it. I remember being a 2L or a 3L, and we had to take a whole course on what we call professional responsibility. And that's basically our ethical course when you are an attorney. And you actually have to take a test and pass the test. And it's one of those things where you're talking about how to treat client money, how to act as a lawyer, violations that'll get you disbarred. But there's also talk of the darker side, which, for us, it's generally substance abuse and alcoholism. And within that course, they actually provided resources to us where if you're struggling with alcoholism, struggling with substance abuse, or even struggling with other areas, maybe suicide or family issues, you can reach out to these resources and hopefully nip the problem in the bud before you end up going down a path of ending up disbarred or possibly doing something that holds you civilly or criminally liable and maybe even ending up in jail, hurting yourself, hurting others, so on and so forth. In law school for us, it was definitely brought up. And then you start thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, is this actually something that occurs in practice? And then you get into practice and you realize there's actually issues here. They weren't lying about what you would see when you're out in your career.
And sometimes I wonder whether or not a lot of the substance use and drug use that we see in practicing physicians actually stems from medical school when we start our education, because very high stakes courses, you're taking one or two exams per class, which determine your grade and whether or not you're going to be able to become a doctor. And so you're studying constantly 24/7. And then when you're done with the test, you have to try to like decompress somehow. And a lot of us in medical school, we turn to alcohol as a way to decompress, to wind down after a big exam like that. And not only that, but it would bring us all together to socialize. It's one of those things is I wonder if it was like a slippery slope for some people who already had that propensity, maybe has that addicting personality and was more prone or more likely to become addicted. And so became dependent eventually. I'm always curious about that. And obviously, it's really hard to not only navigate, but get the information and the data on that, because not everyone's going to be very forthcoming about when they started, how they started, especially when you're a professional. It's not something that you openly talk about.
And it's a wild thought that when you're in college, for most people, college is the first big exposure to drugs and alcohol. Most of the time, you're turning 21 when you're in college. Now you can legally go out and drink. I'm sure there's some underage drinking before that. But then when you get to grad school, for the most part, everybody is of age. Everybody's 21 plus. So to your point, how do people unwind? Well, they go grab a drink, they go to happy hour, they go to the bar. And I found that within law school, even sometimes the events that would take place also contained drinks, alcohol, and wine. And so you'd have these law school hosted events, law school hosted competitions. I still see it today when I take my students to competitions. There will be a happy hour, or there will be a gala. There will be something in which there is alcohol widely available. And most of the time it's free, to where you can just go up and get your free drink. And so the encouraging of drinking exists at that next level. So it happens in law school. And then when you get out into practice, it just continues. It's just an accepted thing. And I don't harp on anybody who drinks, because obviously you and I both partake in alcohol. You could see behind me, I have a full bar sitting right behind me. But I think that in moderation, it's okay, but in excess, it can be extremely harmful to your personal life and your career. And I just find that things rotate around it, social scenarios rotate around it. It's always available.
Medically speaking, it's hard when you are the person in the thick of it, trying to figure out if you truly are addicted, if you're truly dependent on these outside sources. You may be drinking every day and not realize it. You could still be fully functional in your work and your job, but then as soon as you get home, you're putting down a fifth of vodka or a couple cans of beer every single night. And so it's really hard to really be cognizant of what you're doing and the behaviors that you're having when you're in the moment itself. Sometimes it takes a really big life event or another person pointing it out to you for you to actually realize that, hey, I might have a problem.
And to that point, like, the problem is circular. It's a vicious circle, because the stress could lead to the drinking could lead to the divorce could lead to the suicidal thoughts. And you could reverse that order, you can switch up that order, and it all still exists. I'm getting a divorce, so I'm going to start to drink. I've been working more hours, so now I'm really depressed because I'm not spending time with the family, and now I'm thinking about hurting myself. It all intertwines, and I think that's really, really interesting as far as trying to find work-life balance, and also trying to make sure you're doing right by yourself, you're staying healthy, and you're not digging that hole both personally and professionally that you have to find a way out of. So when you got into practice or residency, was it the same as medical school? Did that transfer over where everybody's let loose? Because you guys don't have a lot of time in residency.
Exactly. It's the same, just in a different setting. I mean, now we're actually making a little bit of money, so you actually are able to go out when you do go out. But you're right. You're still working, 40, 60, 80 hours sometimes a week. When you have that one day or one evening off, you're going to go out and you're going to go out to the city, you're going to go out to the club, you're going to go out to the bar to enjoy yourself and meet other people, because otherwise you're just seeing patients and your colleagues every single day all the time. It's a way to decompress suppress, but it's when it gets out of hand, and that's where it's very hard to determine when for you is it going to be out of hand, because everyone's tolerance is a little different, everyone's self-control is a little different, and that's where the professional comes into place. And if you feel like you need some help, you should definitely speak to someone, and usually it's your primary care physician. That would be the first place to start.
I've actually never thought about that because when I think of I might have a problem with alcoholism, maybe I should call the number that's on whatever commercial, or maybe I should seek out an AA meeting. Those are the go-to options from a societal standpoint. So is there value in actually going to your primary and saying, hey, I think I have a problem. What should I do?
Absolutely. Remember, your primary care physician is your quarterback. He or she is going to be that one person that will help guide your care, whether that is mental health, physical health. Like, they're going to be the one to know how to help you navigate the health system. So, yes, there are medications that can help with cravings. But more importantly, the idea behind your physician is that we're supposed to help figure out why we're drinking in the first place.
Right.
It's usually not just because you like to drink, it's usually because we're trying to hide from something, or maybe we have underlying anxiety, underlying depression, something else is going on, and we got to get to the root cause so that we can fix that root cause, then hopefully potentially be able to then fix the drinking or substance use problem from there. And it's not just your family physician, but the family physician will call upon other people on the team, whether that's your counselor, your therapist, your psychiatrist. There are so many people within the community but also in the medical sphere that are there to help you. The issue is finding those resources and whether or not the area that you live in have the appropriate resources. And of course, here in the US, we do lack in that mental health space.
I'm gonna push it one step further because that opens something that I never really knew existed. It could be anybody, your neighbor, you, your parents. It doesn't have to be a professional. But I'm sitting here as a lawyer and I realize that I have a substance abuse problem. I am on hard drugs. Am I still able to come to my physician and have that conversation? Most people would think that they might be liable, maybe criminally, for doing drugs. You might pick up the phone and call the police and say, hey, I have somebody here who has going through their system, or they've been doing cocaine. How is that handled? Because a lot of people would be scared to talk about a drug issue with their family physician or anybody just because of the legality of it.
That's the wrong way to think about it. Of course, there's always that patient-doctor relationship that you have to think
Mhm.
about. HIPAA violations. There are rules in place to protect the relationship, but also the privacy of your health and your overall healthcare. But the way we are taught is that we really don't report anything or need to report anything to anyone unless we find that there is some sort of harm or endangerment to themselves or to some people around them. If we feel like their substance use is leading them to drive recklessly every single time they do drugs, then that's probably going to be something that might be reported, not necessarily to their job or employer, but it's going to be reported to maybe the DMV so that someone can take a look at the driving record and just review that. It's not our place to uphold the law. It's our place to uphold health and well-being. If we feel like there is something that could harm themselves or others, that's when we have the right or the honestly mandatory reporting when it's necessary.
That's similar to law, and obviously jurisdictions change throughout the United States. But within most situations, you need to be able to talk to your lawyer about crimes that you've committed, things that have taken place in the past. You have that attorney-client privilege, but there are things that exist if you're going to commit a crime, or if there's a situation where maybe you're harming others, you're harming children or the elderly. Then you have to also find a way to report that. Very similar as to trying to talk to somebody and having confidentiality, having that privilege to where you're protected.
Keep in mind, think about the alternative option. If you don't talk to anyone at all and the substance use, the alcohol use really spirals down to this situation where you actually have now caused harm, you have
Mhm.
killed someone, you have run someone over, you're in a worse place than if you told your doctor in the first place, got on treatment, get past that barrier versus where you actually cause harm and then you're done. Now the legal world takes a hold of your case, and what comes of it is based on what the law says.
Some people are actually under the impression that if they are drunk or they are high or they're under some sort of substance, that whatever they do can be written off from a legal perspective of, oh, that wasn't me, I was drunk, so it's okay. But actually, in most jurisdictions, that ends up escalating the charge. It ends up increasing the charge. You can go from a misdemeanor to a felony because you were intoxicated, because you were abusing a substance. Once you cross that line, anything that you do after could then double, triple, charges, it could increase fees, increase fines, increase jail time. And it's not just, oh, well, I was high, so I didn't have control. It's no, you were high, so you are even more culpable than if you were not.
The other part of
Mhm.
what leads someone into alcohol and drugs is the unspokenness of anxiety, depression, and mental health. It's becoming better. I do feel like Gen Z does a much better job at not only exposing, talking about it, and making it more common as something that is normal to talk about, but definitely older generations, it was something that you would keep inside. But what was it like going through law school and with your attorney colleagues? Do you see a lot of anxiety, depression? Do you know whether or not many of them are on medications or not, or is that something that's pretty hush hush?
It's very hush hush. Like you could talk about it with people that you were close to. If you were close to a friend or a mentor and you guys were in the same boat, there might be conversations about the stress level. But for the most part, you just sucked it up. Like you just said, okay, well, I feel overworked. I'm stressed out because I haven't seen my family. I haven't had a PTO day. I feel the pressure of the job and the career. And then you lean into these other things and you just don't talk about it because you don't want to be judged. And we've talked about that before in other podcasts. We talked about it in like the ADHD podcast, and we talked about it in the work life balance podcast and the children podcast. Like the stress exists because not only are you dealing with your professional side, you're dealing with the personal side. I remember when I was single, it was a lot easier to deal with that stress because I didn't have the stress of a significant other relying on me for certain things, whether that's help, date night, companionship. And then obviously, now that I have a daughter, my stress level is completely different because kids throw a different wrench into everything. I can see where the stress can start adding up. And a lot of people don't want to consider what's going on in other people's lives. Some people may seem like they have it all great on the surface, but you don't realize that they have piles and piles of debt, whether it's student debt or loans or housing problems, or maybe they have family members that are sick, or maybe they're sick. A lot of people don't talk about the illnesses that they face, whether there's terminal illnesses in their family. Everything's very hush hush, especially in the professional world. You just don't know. But then that's where you start seeing cracks in the armor of performance. Are they showing up on time? Are they a little bit more quick to anger? Then you're trying to make an assessment of, okay, is this person just being an asshole or is this person really going through something?
That's very similar to how it is in the medical field in medical school. Everyone is very stoic and we all have an image that we want to keep up. And that image is that we are the smartest, we're the hardest working, and we're the most dedicated. And so we feel that anxiety, depression will pull down that image. Many of us don't talk about it. I was surprised to find out, even just going through medical school, when I struggled in a specific course, I wasn't the only one. I truly thought I was the only one struggling through that class until I went to remediation and I found that it's actually a good percentage of the class. And apparently this happens on every class. There's always a percentage of people who struggle. It's just never spoken about. No one ever knows about it. Everyone just keeps it airtight. And so it's just so interesting that similarly, when it comes to anxiety, depression, mental health disorders, when people are on medications, people get treatment. You don't see it because you're not following them around day to day, but people go through it. If anything, I feel like professionals tend to be the higher percentage of people who have these issues, have anxiety, have depression, have OCD. Like I told you a couple episodes ago, I have personally recently gone to behavioral health to get testing to see whether or not I had some sort of, ADHD, OCD. It took me 36 years to find the confidence or the ability to actually go and seek out help because something was a little off. It's sad that our society is this way, but I'm glad that it's changing and it's improving. But we still have so much farther to go.
In my last job in aerospace, towards the end before I left, I was actually starting to get panic attacks. And I was telling my wife, and she goes, Nick, you're so confident. You're so eloquent when you speak. You're good. I'm like, no, I don't know what's going on, but I'm coughing and I feel like my neck is getting tight and I can't breathe. And they were very random, like the most mundane meetings, the most mundane conversations. One or two times I actually had to leave the room and try to play it off like it was something else. And I tried to pinpoint where the panic attacks were coming from. And I just had to equate it to stress, the stress of the job, the stress of wanting to do well. Cause I think that as professionals, doctors, lawyers, anybody who operates at a high level, it's not just us, entrepreneurs, MBAs, grad students, athletes, you get there because you have a high drive in general. You like success. You want to achieve success. But with that, there also comes with the stress of the situation really rising to that occasion. And you can't just be stressed all the time. If you're stressed all the time, your body's going to break, your mind's going to start breaking, and then everything else around you, you basically crack the foundation, everything starts coming down. When you start really internalizing what's going on and trying to take an introspective look, you start really seeing that the stress, you may not think it's there, you may think you can handle it, but it's going to wear you down over time.
And the more that you hold it in, it leads to this another issue that we see a lot in higher educational professionals is suicide. A lot of people feel like that's really the only way out. And just how many physicians or how many lawyers actually commit suicide, how many are successful, how many attempts. Like there's just so many data and statistics out there that it's really unfortunately that we even have to follow these things.
In trying to do some research for this, I have a note that physicians have higher suicide mortality rates than the general population. It accounts for about 28 to 40 deaths per 100,000, which is more than twice the general rate. And then it also gives a note that female physicians are especially higher in that field. And then obviously the unspoken thing that people don't really consider is we talk about the act of suicide, but general suicidal thoughts. You may not want to commit suicide. You may not follow through. You may not attempt, but you might have those suicidal thoughts which aren't healthy. 9 to 11% of US physicians reported suicidal thoughts. When we come on over to lawyers, lawyers rank among the highest for suicide. They have the note here that's often described as fourth among occupations studied for suicide proportion. 17% of lawyers have seriously considered suicide during their career, with roughly a little less than 1% reporting an actual attempt. And that's sad. And I think that suicide is it's kept to yourself. It's not something that you're really going around talking about. On the surface, everything looks fine, but underneath, you're having these thoughts, and it just leads to other things, and it leads to depression and to mental health. And I just think that those numbers are not something that is at the forefront when we're talking about pros and cons of the profession.
Again, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, it's really hard to understand where you're at and look at the bigger picture because us looking from the outside, we can see if you take your life or if you harm yourself, there's going to be this ripple effect for the people around you, your family members, your friends, your colleagues, like they're all going to be affected. There's just so many people around that person, that individual. When that individual is struggling, they may not realize that and then not see that. They feel like the answer is to just end it all and then that will be a quick fix. But ultimately, they will leave behind this huge burden for the rest of the people around them. I don't want to put the pressure on anyone struggling with this, but this is where it's so important that you seek out help. And there are medications that can help re-regulate specific hormones. There is therapy, which is really the other part of the puzzle, is figuring out what's triggering it and how do we cope with it. Medications are nice, but they're not the end all be all. It's not magic. You do have to take a multifactorial step to figure out the solution, and everyone's solution or treatment plan is going to be very different. But it always starts with your physician.
And I think that with the physician, there are always other avenues as well. At first, you have to recognize that you have an issue. You have to basically say, okay, I'm struggling with thoughts of suicide. I'm struggling with substance abuse. I'm struggling with alcoholism. You have to come to terms with that. And if you're thinking about committing suicide, it's pretty obvious that you're at that point in life where you're stressed out. There's a lot of resources out there. There's hotlines out there as well as HR resources, depending on where you're working, where the stress doesn't have to always be on you to figure it out. If you can reach out to those in your network, those in your career, other friends, colleagues, peers, mentors, like there's going to be somebody that is going to try to help you. Just from working in corporate America, if you were to go to HR and say, this is what I'm thinking about, I don't feel right, and it's caused from the stress of work or the stress of family or what have you, they're going to try to do their best to help you out. Because I feel like most corporations want to put out a good working life. They want to be a place that other people seek out to work at. And so they want to take care of their employees. At the same time, there's the legality of it. You don't want a person in your office committing suicide just from the legal ramifications that may or may not take place, whether or not they decide to, hurt themselves or hurt others. So there are people that want to help. There are people that will help. And it's just a matter of really reaching out and trusting that there is help out there.
Right. Anxiety, depression, and it really is the interpersonal relationships that we all manage, deal with, create, and this huge web of relationships. I'm interested to hear whether or not you have noticed a change in your relationships going through law school. From college, it was really easy to make friends and stay connected in college, but once you get to law school, medical school, it changes a little bit, and then it changes more once you get out into real life, have kids, have family of your own. What have you seen from those interpersonal relationships and how has it grown for you? Or has it not grown and actually have you lost a lot?
That's a very good question, and I talk about vulnerability on this podcast a lot. It's a very vulnerable question. As a single individual, I felt like I could handle the world, throw whatever at me. I could stay up late. I could do whatever assignment. I could really work at whatever, and that was fun. Like I almost thrived off the stress of it. Then, as I got into relationships, I've had relationships end because of stress, whether it's from work or other outside variables. And then I've had friendships that have gone down the drain because of stress. Sometimes you feel overwhelmed. And so you start pushing aside either the very, very easy things or you start pushing aside the things that are also causing you stress. So there have been times where I've pushed away my significant others because I was stressed at work. Maybe there's a deadline, maybe there's a hard negotiation, maybe there's a big trial coming up, and I have to lock things down. And when you start hearing your significant others complaining about, well, I haven't seen you, we're not talking, or you're very short or quiet, and you're just not present, those things would just stress me out even more to where I almost wanted to like yell and scream. And at times I did yell and scream of like, you don't understand what I'm going through right now. I need to get through this. And then afterwards, you try to come back and you apologize, but sometimes the deed is already done. You've already put a rift in that relationship. As I've gotten older, I've tried to be more aware of it and address it with communication, but also not stress out too much if some relationships fell to the wayside. I even think with you and me, we've both gone through our careers and gone through school. As friends, we've held each other accountable, and having people in your social circle that are reliable but also understand really helps, because I understand you're busy, you understand I'm busy. There's no pressure to try to be more of a friend than I can be in that moment. There's no pressure to be more of a husband from my wife. She understands it. There's no pressure to be more of a son from my parents. They all just get it. And that's because we've talked about it, we've communicated about it. As I've gotten older, the stresses, they don't go away. They just keep adding up, adding kids, adding homes, cars, new jobs, moving states, whatever it is. The stresses are always going to be there. But it's just a matter of how you take those on and being very, very introspective about how you should be handling it. I have the same question for you. What about you as you've gone through your career and you've built yourself a nice little family and you've jumped states? Where have you been?
I knew that I was going to struggle creating relationships because, again, I told you I'm a very big introvert. My natural go to is to just be at home by myself, gaming out, something on TV, just Netflix and chill. And so if that's my natural habitat and that's where I feel most comfortable, it takes a lot more for me to maintain and create those relationships. So I've made it a priority to try to do that over the years. I'm sure you've noticed this. A lot of my friends have noticed this, but whether it's once a quarter, once a year, I have it in my calendar to say, hey, I should be texting this person to reach out to them, check in on them, see how they're doing. Or if I randomly think of a great memory of ours, I'm going to text that person right away because time is always fleeting. I don't want that to be a reason why I lose touch with someone. And of course, there are people that I have lost touch with. It's hard. That's just what comes with the chaos of life and the craziness of our daily schedules. I mean, just our relationship. We were roommates. We saw each other every single day. And then you went off to law school and I went off to med school. And I mean, there was probably a year, even 2 years where we probably didn't even talk, maybe texted once or twice. And then here we are again, 10 years after we graduated, and now we're seeing each other once a week. So it's those sort of relationships that ebb and flow. And those are the friends and family members that you feel connected to, that it's worth taking time out of your life to hang out, to talk, to share everything about your life. That is important. You're not going to find those people unless you put yourself out there. That's where, for someone like me who is an introvert, breaking out of that shell, getting on medication if you need to, if there is social anxiety, like it's really important that you find those outlets so that you can treat whatever internal turmoil you have, so that you can create those relationships, because those relationships will eventually lift you up in those moments of sorrow, in those moments of anger, of troubles. Like that's what they're there for.
I couldn't agree more. And for any of our friends listening, I have text messages just sitting there that I haven't looked at that I need to respond to. And I am very bad at trying to prioritize. But for me, stress, those are the first things to go. I'm trying to handle all these other things, our podcast, my relationship with my wife, my newborn baby girl. There's so many different things that I'm trying to focus on that the little things start disappearing. And so I end up feeling really bad because I know that I had great relationships with these individuals and I want to keep those relationships. I just hope that the understanding is there that when I text you, I'll text you. When I call you, I call you. Sometimes I just forget. I'll get around to it. But I enjoy having people that I enjoy in my life. And they may not be at best friend status. I may not ask them to help me bury a body, but at the same time, like I truly enjoy some of these people, but I get overwhelmed really fast. And that I think is just part of life, trying to find that balance where you're not so hard on yourself, but you also recognize like who's important and who needs that text back and trying to make the effort. That's something that over the last year and talking with my wife, I've been really trying to make the effort, but I still suck at it. It's still growing, almost 40, and I'm still trying to be available to people. And that in itself adds a little stress point of like, okay, I'm starting to feel pressure because I need to text back somebody. And every day that goes by feels more and more pressure. And it's all self-prescribed at that point.
I will give you this. Over the last 2 to 3 years, it has been noticeably better for you to respond. It doesn't take weeks for you to respond to a message. You will at least get back in 24 to 48 hours. I
I
will
try.
give you that. Kudos on those improvements. But we know this about you. But that's the beauty of having friends and family that understand you and are willing to accept those weaknesses, but also understand that when you're at your best, it's amazing. You know, it's a great friendship. It's a great, you're a great person to have around. But I want to really dive even deeper for those even closer relationships. So we're talking about boyfriend, girlfriends, fiancés, husbands, and wives. We've had an episode in the past where we talked about the happy things about marriage and how to find a partner and what are the qualities to look for, especially going through med school and law school. But this is now that episode where I want to talk about what strains and stressors can be put on that relationship that potentially may push people further apart. Because in the legal and the medical field, divorce is quite high.
Yep, I'm looking at the stats right now, and divorce in both those areas are about 30%. High for the profession. I was a divorce attorney for 3 years before I moved on to different career paths. Once you're a divorce attorney, you really start looking at everybody as, okay, are they married? Are they single? Are they divorced? Do they have kids? You start throwing all these family dynamics in it. And I'm not just looking at the clients. Every time I walk into a room, the first thing I would do is I find myself looking at the ring finger of opposing counsel, of co-counsel, of the judge, of the bailiff, of whoever was in that room, and just being more aware of who's together and who's not. Now, granted, everybody has a life story. Some people may have been married and divorced. Some people may have never found their person. Some people may have been a widow or a widower. Life happens. But I started becoming more aware of just who was together with somebody and who was not together. It ends up working its way in a conversation because usually when you're networking, you're trying to find out about the person and build that rapport. And if you just listen a little bit more, you start realizing, okay, that person's divorced. That person is going through it, is engaged and they look happy. That person is happily married with kids. And it's out there. Like, a lot of people are divorced, especially attorneys. You start thinking, okay, is this going to be my future? Am I going to end up getting a divorce? And you start trying to figure out what is the cause for that? What is leading to the divorce? Is it money? Is it finances? Is it infidelity? Is it the fact that that person is always working? There's so many different things that play into it. I actually became more aware, and still to this day, that's some of the first stuff I look at is, okay, is this person married? Is there a ring on that finger? And then judging them not positively or negatively, but judging them based on the interactions that they're having with others, trying to figure out, is that an appropriate interaction based on their current marital status? What about the medical field for you guys?
Not necessarily something I notice or pay attention to, but anecdotally thinking about all the relationships that started medical school and only maybe 10-15% of them actually surviving medical school. And then going into residency, same thing. Relationships that survived medical school, but then went into residency, even less survived residency. And like you said, it's that time commitment. It's that ability to find that work-life balance, and being able to be there for your partner, but more importantly, finding a partner that understands that, hey, this is just a very small portion timeline in the grand scheme of things, where they are sacrificing their many hours in a day for work, for career building, but once they come out on the other end of the tunnel, they will be more available, they will be more present. But sometimes it's hard to find that partner that can last those 3, 6, 7, even 10 years of education that sometimes lawyers and physicians have to go through.
It's an investment. You're investing in that person. That's with any career um, professional journey. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you're building a business, whether you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're going through school. If you're with somebody, they have to try to understand what you're going through. They may not be able to truly 100% understand it, but it's at least the attempt and an understanding that, hey, I might need to just weather this storm. When we get out the other side, it will probably get better. However, sometimes it doesn't get better. It actually gets worse. That comes with some of these professions where the billable hour requirements increase. There's not a lot of PTO. There's working late nights. There's working on the weekends. And the family stress starts happening. From a divorce attorney perspective, people are always looking for an outlet. When their spouse is no longer there, what is going to replace that very important person? Is it going to be another person? Is it going to be another man, another woman? Is it going to be a hobby? Is it going to be travel? Are you going to turn out to be very selfish and say, well, if you're selfish working, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to go do my own thing. And those things just break the foundation even more, which then leads to people breaking up, people divorcing in relationships. It's at the forefront because all we see in social media are red flags this, green flags this, read this book for this relationship, online dating this, online dating that. It's something to be reckoned with, and you can't avoid it. You have to face your relationship issues head on if you want to fix them.
And I want to make sure that we are very open and honest about this conversation, because we're making it seem like it's the partner of of the professional that is going to be to blame. But I have seen quite a few times where the actual professional is the one in the wrong, because they are spending 40, 60 hours at work. They're hanging out with the same people, whether for a physician, maybe they're hanging out with the nurse more, the surgical tech more. And hey, maybe they're younger, maybe they're pretty, and they're spending so much more time together there at work that sometimes they start to build those relationships out of their home relationship. Any relationship you go into, it takes two people to tango. The onus is on both people to understand, to communicate appropriately. But again, that is the other dark side of this conversation, is that as professionals, we do have this power dynamic. And sometimes, especially if you have an ego, you take advantage of that and inappropriately take advantage of it. And it can cause a lot of issues when it comes to your personal life, but also your career as well.
I've actually talked about this in other episodes where I have a recurring theme in my arguments in my own life where it's don't lawyer me. Where when I get in arguments, I use my position and my knowledge and my skills that have been instilled in me as a lawyer. And I bring those to the battlefield against my, girlfriend or against my brother or my wife. And before you know it, I am the problem because of the way I'm arguing. Everything's black and white, and I don't let them play in the gray area, and I act like I'm in a courtroom. And that's not good for any relationship. So I completely agree. You have to take responsibility and really look at what you're doing to harm or encourage any of those relationships. And sometimes it's as simple as I want to work so I can have more money, so I can provide better for my family. And you have all these things you want to achieve. And maybe that's not something that your partner wants. Maybe your partner just wants you to be at home more. Maybe your partner just wants to see you more or wants you to hang out with the kids more. You have to be on the same page because what you may want may not align with what your partner wants. And that could lead to those stresses to where now you're working late nights, your partner's missing you. It's because you're choosing to work late nights and you're a workaholic. And then it's the slippery slope of, oh, we might be getting a divorce. And because we might be getting a divorce, I'm going to just put my head more into the work, or I'm going to turn to alcohol or drugs or other things that will just keep burying me lower and lower and lower down to the hole.
But also, wants and needs evolve and change over time. So as a partner, you're not always going to be stagnant. As you go through life, maybe you don't want kids early on, and then eventually you do. But that's where that communication really comes into play, not just with your partner, but everyone around you, whether that's your colleague that you work with, it's your best friend. If you guys are trying to plan something for the future, you need to make sure that everyone's up to date. Your plans may change 3, 6 months from now because something new has come up. But if you don't communicate that change, no one's going to know. That's where the conflict comes about, when there's that miscommunication and that disconnect.
Another thing to note for people that are either married or friends with a doctor or a lawyer is, I know that we put out these egos that we can handle it all, that we can do it all. But I don't think there's a lot of consideration for what we go through sometimes. For myself, I don't want to assume what you've gone through long, although I've heard some stories. But for myself, my mom has said to me in the past, "What happened to you? Why are you so cold? When you were younger, you used to be the sweetest person and you used to always be helpful." And I still am that person. I want to help out everybody. But there's also this mentality shift that going to law school and then being a lawyer has caused, where I have to look at things from a 30,000-foot view and try not to put too much emotion into it. So then it makes me look cold. Or the things that I have seen or had to address are so horrible and so tragic that the trivial things that other people might be going through that might be horrible and tragic for them just don't hold any weight with me. From the beginning of going to law school, you read these tragic cases about people losing limbs and dying and being arrested and these horrible crimes that occur, and start getting used to those things. So when somebody is complaining about, well, my margarita didn't have the right amount of alcohol in it, you're like, well, I just handled a child abuse case today. And I just had to question a witness about what they saw with their kid and the abuse that they sustained and how it's mentally impacting their child. Like there's all these things that exist that bring you to a different level that not a lot of people will experience. And so they can't put themselves in your shoes, but then you get blamed as, well, you're just the cold professional that only cares about A, B, and C, and you're only looking out for your ego and yourself. And you're like, well, I really just don't want to bring the negative things of my day into your life. It stops at me. I'm holding it all in so you don't have to experience that. And that's just from a legal profession. I've talked to you before in which you're like, yes, I just had somebody come into the ER. I couldn't save their life. Like I tried everything I could and I couldn't save that person's life. A lot of people will never experience that, never even be in the room to experience that. Sometimes that's not into consideration when they're thinking of the stress points that lawyers and doctors and other professionals go through. I want to give it to you. I know you've seen some stuff and you've had to really help other people, and there's some instances where you can't. And that's got to have some weight, at least as far as you and your relationships.
That's a really great lead into just burnout in our fields, especially in medicine, burnout and becoming jaded. That's a very common term that we use in the medical field. People, especially doctors who've been working for 2 to 3 decades, they get to the middle or near the end of their career and they are just put through the ringer. It's like you said, they've seen the most stressful situations. They've seen so many deaths. They've dealt with so many difficult patients, but also dealing with society and societal expectations of what their job is supposed to be, what physicians are supposed to bring to the table, how are we supposed to treat patients. And it's an ever changing landscape. It starts to really knock you down over time, and that's why we say it turns you really jaded. Maybe at the beginning of your career you're very vibrant and optimistic and happy, but near the end you are just the most sad, angry physician out there. I'm hoping that I won't be that person and I won't turn into that person, but it's common. It's something that I see a lot with our older physicians because they've been doing it for so long. That's the reality of the careers that we choose, is that you have to know that this is not going to be something that you could potentially sustain for a very long time. Hopefully we can, if you go into it for the right reasons and you have that work-life balance and you have a great network around you, you absolutely can have a fulfilling career of 30, 40 years and come out the other end loving everything that you've done. But those are exceptional cases. They're not the normal.
I went through that myself, and everybody always asks, why did you leave being a divorce attorney? And it was because I hit a point where, as a divorce attorney, you can either jump in full emotions and you're ready to fight and go to war for your client, and you almost embody their emotions. And I'd done that sometimes, but then over the course of it, you also become jaded, where the family comes in, or the mom comes in, or the dad comes in, and it's, well, my significant other has beat me over the last year. They've done these terrible, horrible things to me and my kids. And you're like, well, that's just another Tuesday. Let's see how much we can bill out and let's go to court and let's file. And the next day, the same exact type of person walks in. You're like, okay, that's Wednesday. What else you got? And you start realizing that you have become jaded and the serious things that occur in society just don't hold a lot of weight because of what you're sitting there in the moment hearing and seeing and talking through. It's like, well, okay, it's just another day. And I felt like I didn't want to necessarily embody that. I wanted to find the good out of life and transition a different career. I went to planes. I went to aerospace. I went to negotiations. It's dealing with corporations and dealing with money. That was a little bit easier for me to stomach than the day to day of child abuse and infidelity and the horrible of the horrible when it came to family life.
In medicine, as physicians, we deal with insurances, not being able to get the medications that we want for our patients covered, or employer requirements. They require that you see a certain amount of patients or you do a certain amount of procedures throughout the year. There are always these benchmarks that we have to hit, and sometimes they're unreachable. Those are all other stressors and things that go unspoken. People just think that physicians go in, we see patients, and then we make a whole bunch of money. And if you follow up on our income and specialty episodes, yes, we do make good money, but we also have a lot of student debt, and all the stressors. There's just so much more that goes into becoming a lawyer and a physician that we're hoping that some of these episodes will help guide our future generation of professionals.
Hopefully, it gives our listeners a new appreciation for, I will at least say, a doctor. A lot of the times we're like, well, why is my doctor late to my room? I just went to the ER. Why do I need to wait 6 hours? There's all these different dynamics that the patient doesn't consider. And this really stood out. I've mentioned this before with my wife's OB, where she would literally come up to clinic and say, sorry, I was just downstairs delivering a baby. But that could happen in an ER, that can happen in a hospital situation. Sorry, I was just giving CPR to a car accident patient. They didn't make it. And now I have to put on my game face because you're sitting in here and I need to now come to this room. I can't tell you about what I just went through. I can't tell you about all the hardship of what just happened last hour. But now I have to put on a smile and say, all right, tell me about your stuffy nose. A lot of patients don't understand that. A lot of students who are at med school and law school, you need to understand that a lot of what you do will go unnoticed. A lot of what you have to really put out will go unnoticed. And you just have to keep pressing on because your patients and your clients don't want to hear it. They just want to focus on what can you do to help them. And there's going to be no appreciation for the fact that you were trying to save a life 5 minutes ago. You're in the here and now. And most of the time, from confidentiality, you can't even tell them what you were doing in the last 5 minutes.
I mean, great points. And before we close, my final question is: if you had the opportunity to do everything all over again, would you still go through law school? Would you still go through, become a lawyer and do what you did and then transition? Or would you bypass all of that and not deal with the stressors and the, late nights? And would you still go through it all?
I love every minute and every second of what I've gone through. Law school and being an attorney and the friends and contacts and things have just built on top of each other. I like stress up to a certain point. That's not to say that I haven't been down in my life. That's not to say that I haven't been happy or I haven't experienced little fits of depression where I just feel like the world's against me. I have. Everybody has, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's brought me to a position to where I feel very, very fortunate to have the people around me. I have a lovely family. I have just a good position in life as far as having a good network and really having support. So I wouldn't change it for anything. But looking back, I probably would have done things differently to help better manage the stress or maybe acknowledge sooner that I was in stressful situations that may have led to poor relationships or what have you. There are things that I would change individually, but overall, I'm happy for my journey. What about you?
I love what I do. Absolutely, absolutely cannot see myself not doing it. That stems from my lowest point in life, which was in the middle of medical school. And when I was at that lowest point where I thought maybe I was not going to be able to pursue medicine, I realized how important medicine was for me. And nowadays, I take every day as a blessing that I can still go see patients, that I can still do what I love. I'm lucky in that way. I did have to go through certain trials and tribulations to get to where I am. And so I agree with you. I would not change anything. If I hadn't gone through those trials and errors, I don't think I would have been as good of a doctor as I am nowadays to my patients. I wouldn't be able to connect in the same way. And so it's really important that I did go through what I went through. I absolutely would do this time and time again, as stressful as it is. That's a great place to end on a more optimistic, happy note. It's not all doom and gloom, but this was the Medical Legal Brief here with Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. If you guys haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, like. We're on Spotify, we are on YouTube, we're also on a lot of the other social media platforms. But please find us and comment and let us know your thoughts. And we'll be posting again on Wednesdays at 10 Central Time.
And if you're struggling with any of the topics or categories that we talked about today, there are resources out there. Please go talk to somebody, talk to your lawyer, talk to your doctor, reach out for help because it does exist.
Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.